I was waiting for somebody else to talk. I'll do it. Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of the 8-Man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. And why is it special? Because Brandon's not here. And I can do this because every time I'm in my car or whatever, I'm listening to a Prepcast. Doesn't matter if it's the 8-Man. Doesn't matter if it's East Idaho. Without a doubt, he's bashing me at some point, thinking I won't hear it. It doesn't matter what it is. So we're going to take this opportunity to just basically, it's not going to be a Prepcast. We're all just going to take turns bashing on Brandon. No, just kidding. He's actually doing a game tonight. He's Lake City at Post Falls. And so he asked me if I would fill in as the guy just kind of directing traffic, and that's what we're going to do. We decided to go live with it, so that includes all of you as well, all of you 8-Man fans getting ready for the postseason. But first, let's meet who's here with us. Of course, we got the old standbys. Will Henneke up in your top right, and Coach Lane Kirtland from Cary. Those guys are always here. They've been here all year long, adding pearls of wisdom to the 8-Man Prepcast this year. It's been absolutely fantastic having you guys on. Then the bottom left of our mini Brady Bunch block here is the Logan Green. Logan has broadcast more 8-Man games this year for Idaho Sports than any of us. Will's been on the sidelines taking pictures of different games. So down here to this side are probably the most educated guys in the 8-Man ranks, bar none. So as you're watching, make sure you like and share. Make sure you tell friends and family, hey, you can watch these jokers do a show tonight. It will be archived to watch later on as well. So if you want to comment, if you want to ask a question of anyone or of the group, just put it in the comments. We'll see it. And if it's worthy of being answered, we will. Sometimes we just don't, because you know who you are. So let's start things off, guys. Let's start at the top of the state, way up north. Some of the best games going on this Friday night, tomorrow night. We've got Mullen Tigers, Will. Coach Spooner up there, you've known him a long time. Have you talked to him at all this year about how he's looking at the playoffs coming up?
Not specifically, no. He was having to obviously replace a lot of key players who really carried the load for the last 2, 3, 4 years, and asking some new players to step into the forefront, and that's happened. He's got a freshman quarterback, Connor Lulis, who's been great. John Pruitt, Kofi Apia, they've both done a great job carrying the ball and playing defense. So, it's never truly a complete plug and play at this level. You have to adapt to the personnel that you have. And he and Jesse Allen, the coach from St. Regis over in Montana that coaches with him, they've done a heck of a job adapting to what they do. And they just keep winning football games.
Well, that's a good point. And Coach, I want to ask you that, where you get to big schools, you've got 200 kids trying out. You pick the best of the best. When you get into those 2A, 1A schools, you get what you get, right? And you can't really just bring somebody else in most of the time. How did you do it at Cary year after year of having such great success there with such a limited student body?
That's a great question. You get everything out of everybody you got, and you get everyone, and that's what we really tried to do, is promote that we're having a blast. Come join us. I coached the 7th and 8th grade as well, and I made sure that those kids had a great experience, and brought them along and made sure I wanted them for another 4 more years, and that kind of helped us keep the train on the track for quite a little while. But we had some great kids come along, and very fortunate in that way, for sure.
Yeah, you really did. It was always fun to watch you guys come in and out of the playoffs. Looking up north, Logan, there's some teams up there as we're heading into the playoffs. They've clinched. Maybe some tiebreaker scenarios might not be involved in our Logos have kind of come out this year and really been the team to beat up there. What have you 3 guys heard about the Knights this year? I know we've webcast a few of their games, Garrison with our North Idaho game night, but the Logos Knights have really come out and I think surprised some people this year.
Can I jump back? Sorry, I didn't get to. I wanted to speak on your Mullen conversation that you were having earlier. I can't. Okay, well then I quit.
Mute him.
No. Okay. So this is a question, Will, that I probably have for you.
Sure.
I haven't seen Mullen play this year. Paul, me and you were there. We went a couple years ago. They played Dietrich in the semifinals in a day that the ground was frozen solid, and everybody just they had a concession stand there, and they sold out of the hot chocolate. That was the only thing anybody wanted. It was that type of day. It was really it was very cold. But when we seen Mullen right in the playoffs the last couple of years, they've had these phenomenal regular season runs. And then they just fall short when we get to the playoffs, right? Whether it was on that game in Dietrich or last year at home against Garden Valley. And do they have it this year, in your view, to get over that hump? What is it that's been missing from them? It looked like, at least from when I saw this is 2 years ago, the offense wasn't there, right? They couldn't keep up in the speed factor. Is that something that has improved for them, or you think that they're going to be able to get over that hump soon? It's kind of like Notice, right? We see this with Notice, right? Yeah. Great regular season, and then they get to the playoffs and there's nothing there. So do you see that changing this year?
Well, a conversation I did have with Coach Spooner earlier, and Coach Kirkland, I'm sure you'll understand exactly what he's talking about when he says that, in some years past, he goes, there's two things. He said, we're too reliant on the home run. We need to get better at sustaining drives, converting third downs, and wearing defenses out a little bit. And then he said, and on top of that, when it comes to the playoffs, the kryptonite for Mullen St. Regis, and this would be true of almost anybody, it's been having to travel south and play teams like Dietrich and like Cary and like Castleford. That's a very tough place to play up there because as you saw yourself, that can be a really tricky place when the weather is not good. Yep. You turn that thing into a mud pit and then you just roll the ball out there and see what happens. You get down here, conditions are generally a little bit more fair. The talent may be a little bit deeper than it is up in District 1, and it's a long bus ride to come down here and face some of the teams that they've had to face in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. That answers your question about Mullen. You got more. I mean, Mullen's always right. They've always had really big guys.
Yeah, yes, and it's just one of those. It's just like it's going to happen at some point, right? It has to. They have to break through eventually. Just selfishly, I hope to see it. Right? We don't ever root against anybody, but we hope to see teams that have been right there kind of punch through to the next level. And I think they're one of those ones that's just been right there, kind of lurking on the outside, and hopefully they can find a way to get it done.
I always root against the Raiders. That's kind of a general rule in my book.
Not the Rimrock Raiders.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant. No, of course not. No, Vegas Raiders. One thing about Mullen before we go on is he's a freshman quarterback, correct?
Yes,
he's a freshman. Yeah, how big is that? I mean, having a freshman quarterback. I mean, you look at Kendrick, right? They had a freshman quarterback who now is senior. And, he's done a couple of good things up there the last couple of years. As a freshman quarterback, you can only go up from there. And so they had success as a freshman, build guys around it. Coach, in your coaching history there, how many freshman starters did you have at quarterback?
0.
Really?
0. We've started quite a few as sophomores for sure, but none at freshmen. That's a pretty high level of play right there. And it is. We never find that kind of athlete at that age yet.
Yeah, you're right. So when you do see it, it's kind of like, whoa, it's either, okay, the first day of practice, okay, who can throw further than 20 yards? Great, you're quarterback. Put on a different jersey number. Or if you've got the guys like you always had, and I think that's a pretty good gift to have, is you don't have to put people in certain positions. So, yeah, Mullen is, and Mullen-St. Regis, with a freshman quarterback, they're going to be fun to watch over the next 2, 3, 4 years.
All right, St. Regis. I found Surge in their gas station like 5 years ago. I was like, where did this? Who pulled this out of some dark closet? And I bought all they had. I'm just kidding.
I guarantee. Surge is a drink from the 90s.
The expiration date might have been from the 90s.
I didn't look. I
doubt they make it anymore. And
it's against the FDA standards, probably.
It's like they put Squirt and Mountain Dew together, and it was a bad marriage. It was,
and then made Mellow Yellow, baby.
Mellow Yellow.
I'll admit, I have to drink Mellow Yellow sometimes when when the dew's not there. It's like, hey, you have Mountain Dew? No, we have Mellow Yellow. Oh, all right.
He just leaves. He's like, I'm out.
Mountain Mist, the Shasta Mountain Mist. Gotta love it.
Yeah. Speaking of the dew, I just want to shout out to Paul for, helping me join the squad here, buying me this Mountain Dew hat. Brandon sent something kind of nasty, of course, against Paul and said, "Oh, Paul's probably going to wear that Mountain Dew hat."
Oh, it was Will who said it.
Oh, there you go, Will.
Yeah.
And so, what do I get in the mail yesterday? Oh, beautiful black Mountain Dew hat.
I hope Paul wears that stupid Mountain Dew hat.
Yeah, I'm going to wear it in class tomorrow.
Yes.
Go
yes.
Paul.
Every time we would come do games there, they would say, okay, here's the number to our Booster Club resident. Just text them anything you want. Okay, Mountain Dew. 2 seconds later, bam, it's there. It's fantastic. But, Will, he goes and does that. I make a little reel about it, put it on Instagram and stuff. It had over 5,300 views on it in a couple days, Will. So you're a hated man to 5,300 people.
Or loved man.
Maybe.
One of the two.
Could have gone either way. Man, we're only 2 minutes into it and we're already off the rails. That's why I'm looking forward to this.
One time me and your son, your Will, Paul, you guys were at Cary doing a game when we were watching it, driving back. It was the Kendrick Oakley game last year. And as soon as it pops on, somebody from Cary had asked you a question. And the first thing we hear on the broadcast is, yes, I will take a Mountain Dew.
If they offer it, I'm going to cut off. If I'm talking to the president of the United States and someone says, would you like a Mountain Dew? Yeah, I'll take one.
Coach, something I always hear whenever I'm listening to a Cary broadcast, because Paul always volunteers to do those. He always comments how the broadcast area is directly in the jet stream of whoever is cooking the burgers. And so all he can do is smell the burgers as they're cooking. He talks about it more than the game sometimes.
Kind of like tonight, actually.
It's important. I'm telling you, it's important.
There are worse places to do a game than Cary. There are worse places.
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to get myself in trouble. But Lee J. Cook actually gave me a call this week, the AD at Cary. And he doesn't say hi. And I said, hey, how's it going? He doesn't say hi. He says, so are my cheeseburgers not good enough for you to come anymore? And I went, no, it's your team. And I said I was kidding. I was kidding. He almost me. Yeah, I was kidding. Yeah, I probably shouldn't. I shared too much. All right. Let's take a look at another game being broadcast this week. And I believe Brandon's going to be there. Is that tomorrow night, Logan?
Yeah, the Clark Fork and Lakeside. It's funny because that's the second time we've covered. Is that the first regular season double dip? I think probably. I'm sure there's a record in the book in there somewhere, but the second time we've covered that game this year.
Yeah, this might be the second game we've covered for Clark Fork. Period. In the history. Yeah. So that is the record books. I mean, Lakeside also a very tough team this year. I think it's Quincy Hall, 4 rushing touchdowns last week. They know how to play football in Lakeside. Coming up against Clark Fork, Wampus Cats, Knights. Who are you guys looking at for that? Will, let's start with you.
Lakeside got the first game. And one thing, I think Brandon did that game as well. One thing we talked about on this podcast after the fact was that Clark Fork head coach Patrick Young was very comfortable running that play clock all the way down, pick up 5 yards, run that play clock all the way down, pick up 5 yards, and really try and control the ball and control the clock. And, if they're able to do that up there in Clark Fork, I think they've got a really good chance to pull it off. They've got a good squad there. They had they started a little bit slow, but they played better the last couple of weeks from all appearances and from what I'm hearing. And when you're at home and you're at Clark Fork, as long as they hold on to that football and if they can control that line of scrimmage, I like their chances.
Yeah, Clark Fork, it's a beautiful place as well. I went up there for that Castleford Clark Fork game last year in the playoffs, and it was fantastic. It was a good time. So Coach, I mean, it's a long ways away, but have you really kind of kept track of Lakeside up there and seen what they've done this year?
I've just followed Lakeside's record over the years and seen that they do pretty well. They got some tradition going there. But I kind of like what Will's talking about there. I think a second game is hard to win sometimes, and maybe Clark Folk will make those adjustments and make a few less errors this time and pull off the win at home.
That's a good point. When teams play each other in the regular season, they kind of give up their cards a little bit. There's not a lot of plays they can tuck in the back pocket for later. It's really a matter of, okay, we both know what we're going to do. You have to come out and stop us. We have to come out and stop you. And that's really when it comes down to these, first early round or end of season games and heading into that first round of the playoffs. That's really what it comes down to. I think it's not a matter of secrecy where no one's hiding game film. It's everybody knows what we've got. Everybody knows what we do. Let's go play some football. Logan, you're a transplant, North Carolina. You've lived in Idaho a long time, but you have really gotten the reputation for really knowing the teams. I remember the first year we worked together, we're driving somewhere, and I did this little trivia thing. Okay, tell me the mascot for this school. You knew them all.
Sure.
And so that's really the big reason we brought you into this Prepcast tonight is your, deep knowledge of these 8-man teams coming in statewide. So, you and I have talked about some of those North teams. Let's work down to Kendrick, for example. You've seen Kendrick how many times this year? 3?
Yeah, and they're phenomenal. I mean, if you go back to that last game y'all were talking about, though, one thing to keep an eye on is Lakeside when they beat Clark Fork that first time. Obviously, y'all said it; they were at home, but they had just beaten Wallace and just beaten Deary. They were on a 2-game win streak, came in to win that one. They're coming into this one on a 4-game losing streak. Something to keep an eye on, right? Is the momentum more on the side of Clark Fork right now? Just something to keep an eye on. But like you said, Kendrick is just, I mean, they're just the elephant or the tiger in the room, right? They're just, they are what they are. I mean, they're just good. I don't know how many we've seen them play. I've probably done 7 or 8 Kendrick games since their quote dynasty started rolling up there, and Ty Kep just keeps getting better. It doesn't matter which Hewitt kid they put on the field; he's going to score 3 or 4 touchdowns a game. I don't know what's going to stop them right now at this point.
I'm going to go back to something Will said at the top of this. And I can't remember exactly how it went, but it was, we can't keep relying on the home run, right? And that took me right to Kendrick. I was at that Kendrick Grace game last week, and they had a little bit, not a lot of trouble. I mean, they ended up winning pretty good, but there was that little trouble with if they tried to get second, third downs or, trying to make short plays. I mean, they go big. Hewitt can run a mile. I can throw a mile. But can they keep relying on that home run? And is the chink in their armor, if there is one, really the short game, so to speak, Will? If you can't rely on the long game, if you come up against a defense that's going to defend a lot of that, are they going to be able to adjust?
Well, a couple things. Grace, especially early in that game, their defense was able to get Kendrick into a couple 3rd and longs, and Kendrick converted. And then you go back to Logan. I'm sure you were on this game earlier when they played Oakley. Early in that game, Oakley had them in some 3rd and longs, and it wasn't going great for Kendrick early. But the one thing that they have is they've got so many playmakers, whether it's Kep or whether it's Fitzmaurice or whether it's Hewitt or whether it's Twite or what. I mean, just go down the list. They go like 8 or 9 deep, and you can scheme to take away one thing, but then that just opens up just gaping holes in other areas. And that was the thing that really stuck with me from that Grace game, is that they didn't have much success running inside early in the game. So, okay, we'll just take some shots down the field and, oh, look, there's an open receiver, there's an open receiver, there's an open receiver. And all of a sudden it's 30-0 against the number 4 1A Division I team in the state.
Right. And I think it was Logan, I was talking to you, maybe it was to Will this week, about how many maybe it was Will during the game, how many of the top 5 1A D1 teams has Kendrick, who's 1A D2, beat this week or beat this year? 3?
3 of them. Yeah.
3 of them.
I mean, how often does a team in a lower division beat 3 of the top 5 teams in a division above it?
And handily at that, not really. In Butte County, I was there for that one, and that, unfortunately that game ended early. Hopefully everything is going well with Mr. Waymeyer. But I mean, Butte County actually got that game to a 1-score game in the second half, or 10 points, something like that. They were able to cut into it. And Butte County, that's where they're my sneaky one for 1A D1. We're kind of jumping around here, but when it comes to state, I would look out for them. Just they're the ones to hang around the best, I thought, with Kendrick this year.
We will definitely talk about Butte County.
Yeah.
A little bit further out. First, let's wrap up the top part, and using some of the notes that Brandon wrote up for us. Lakeside at Clark Fork, winner gets the second spot to state, as both teams are 2 and 3 in league play. So that's a pretty big game. Lakeside Clark Fork coming out of that, getting that second spot to state.
Yeah, I mean, it's a play-in game, right? It's already week 1 of the playoffs for a lot of teams this week, and it's no different for these two this weekend, right?
Yeah, that's going to be exciting. Now he's got Lewis County Deary is kind of his game of the week, he says, with a lot of information that hopefully you guys read and went over. Lewis County 1-1 White Pine. It was a close game last week. Lewis County Deary close game, coming all the way down to the end with a forced fumble. But Lewis County, the Eagles, they've kind of been the District 2 version of a flyover state for a while. I don't know. Have you guys? I don't think any of you guys have seen them play this year, have you? You saw them?
I went and watched them play against Tri-Valley, and it's I mean, they have 2 or 3 playmakers, and led by Gage Crow, senior running back, who's at something like 1,100 yards rushing in the last 3 weeks. So they put the ball in his hands, and they say, go make something happen. And for the last few weeks, more often than not, he has. Now they play Timberline this week. So it's Kendrick playing Deary and Timberline playing Lewis County. And the prevailing thought is that Kendrick will take care of Deary, and that Lewis County will take care of Timberline, and Lewis County will get that second playoff spot. But right. Coach, you've been in this spot before where you're going to play a team. Timberline has their horseback. Rylan West, who was hurt early in the year, was injured, missed several games. Well, he's back now. And you've got 2 big, strong kids that are running back / linebackers that are going to be going nose to nose in that game. And I don't know that one's the lock of the week that maybe some people think it is. Timberline could definitely give Lewis County some trouble.
It sure could. I've seen it before where players who've been out and injured have come back towards the end of the season, and they're great leaders and some of their top players, if not the best player. And it propels everybody, and they just follow that dude. And they've gained experience without him now, a little bit of depth, and then they're able to go forward and to take that enthusiasm into this big game that really matters, and maybe pull it off.
Now, in the case of there is a tiebreaker, guys. Brandon sent that in the White Pine League Constitution, if 2 teams, I didn't know leagues had constitutions. First off, that's kind of cool.
You need to listen to the podcast more. We've talked about it with Coach Kirkland. He wrote
I
one.
I like listening because you guys just bag on me. Why would I listen to that?
To hear
Is
us
it going to be on the
you.
back of a dollar bill one day when you guys signed the Constitution?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't even know you guys were still doing this until 2.5 days ago. No, just kidding. It says if 2 teams split or 3 or more teams tie and no head-to-head decision has been made, the champion will be determined using a point system as follows. A victory will count as a plus for the winning team, a minus for the losing team, depending on the final margin of victory. Down we go. Games decided by 20 or more will count no more or less than plus or minus 20. So Lewis County is +2 against Deary. Deary is -2 against Lewis County, of course, +2 against Timberline, and Timberline down 20 to Deary. So Lewis County with that +2, kind of like you said, Will, things just have to play out. Lewis County is going to have it, right?
Yeah, they're in the best spot. I mean, they're the win and you're in team. So if they take care of business tomorrow night, they'll be fine. But Timberline's going to have something to say about that.
They will. They beat Salmon River last week, which Salmon River's kind of like, Cary. They dominated forever, but then at some point, the pendulum has to swing the other way for a year or two, and that's kind of where they're at. How many years was it where, Salmon River is back in the championship? Yeah,
always against Cary. It was for 10 years. It was the Salmon River and Cary classification.
Yep. In fact, it might have been against Cary. I watched them win a championship at BSU at like 10 o'clock in the morning one year, and Salmon River had like 13 guys on their sideline. That might have been against. It was a long time ago. Was that not Cary?
And it was 07. I went till 11 p.m. and on the last play of the game. So, yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Good old days. Good old days, we call those. It's almost 20 years ago.
To bring that up. He's not going to be able to sleep tonight now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still hurts.
Yeah. But to be fair, you dished out your share of nightmares to other coaches as well over the years. So
likely so.
Absolutely. Absolutely did. All right, let's head down just a little bit further now. Let's unless you guys have some more to talk about District 1 and 2. Anything?
I had a few words about Kendrick. I think they're just shifting through the gears. I know there's teams, D2 teams that have played 3 D1 teams in a year. I don't know if that kind of caliber that we've seen get beat this year between Oakley in second gear and Butte County third gear and Gray's fourth gear. Yep. I think they're starting to shift through them all, and now we're gonna hit the fifth gear coming up. So Kendrick's playing really well.
Yeah, how many gears can you have, right? I was looking, like I said, I mentioned that I was at that game in Homedale, looking on the sidelines. There's a lot of kids. There's a lot of kids out there for both. But I was down talking to Zane and Ken Hobart before the game just went on, and they both turned around and looked at Grace and said, they're a lot bigger than they look like on film. and I looked, I'm like, there's some big boys. There's a couple big guys on that Grace team that were fun.
Got a couple big boys too. When you're talking about Dallas Morgan and Boyer and Kimberling, and you go up and down the list, they're not taking a back seat to very many teams size wise and strength wise.
Nope. Absolutely. All right,
they're just committed all the way around. It was awesome when we did the Butte County game. We took some shout outs. Game was at 3:00, and we had multiple elementary classes text in and say, "Hey, we're watching the game. Can you say hi to my class?" So it's not just a right there thing for Kendrick. It's everybody's involved. They're watching the game in class, type thing. So it's
that's fun.
They're all in up there.
Yeah, in the old days, we used to really focus heavy on taking shout outs during every broadcast, and that was always so much fun. I mean, during state wrestling, we would get those, they would bring TVs into like Lakeland, I remember, into the elementary classrooms, and they would just be watching, emailing in. That was always so much fun. It was a big watch party, a statewide watch party with a few thousand of your best friends you'd never met. It was a lot of fun. I missed those days. It was a good time. So, all right, let's go down. Let's hit District 3, guys. Logan, this is kind of your forte. You do the Treasure Valley Prepcast. You're here doing the 8-man Prepcast, but you know these teams pretty well. Of course, Notice the big team to look at. I believe Notice is clinched at this point, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and you got Coach Kirkland. You guys played Notice right in the first round last year, I believe. So you probably have a better idea. They're that team, right? The last couple of years that has won their regular season games, kind of rolled through, but then just hasn't been able to get it done. So and Will, you're pretty into that area. Maybe you guys might know a little bit more of. I think if they have a great opportunity this week, it's a great tune-up, right? And I say tune-up, that doesn't mean it's a tune-up for Valley. It's not saying Valley is a tune-up game, right? Like they're the FCS school you're playing, but playing a good quality non-conference opponent before you're going to play a good, playoff team. Do you think that will help them out over the next few weeks when we get into state at all? And like maybe from your guys' point of view, what is it that they What's their next step for Notice?
I think there'll be a good opportunity for them to play somebody out of league and out of conference, and someone from District 4, and the same for Valley, to see what kind of test they might give to them and show some more of that stuff that they gave to Lighthouse. However, I know that Notice over the years, and I could bounce back clear to 92, 93, and 94, where it was they just couldn't get quite past that next level. They were 10-0 all 3 of those years, and Kerry went over there and took care of business. And then we did the same last year against a great Notice team with a lot of speed and great coaching. But I think it'll be a good matchup for both teams and Notice, and give them a good test to see what they got against District 4 and a hungry, really pretty talented rising Valley team that's doing well. They got whooped last week, but they'll rebound.
Yeah.
Logan, you mentioned earlier that you were talking about Mullen. You're kind of waiting for them to kind of break through Mullen St. Regis. District 3 in the 1A Division 1 classification in general, it's been a while. Notice had a team, I believe it was in the quarterfinals a couple years ago, where their starting quarterback gets hurt like 6 plays into the game.
Right over there at Holt Arena, I think. Yeah,
they have to bring in a freshman quarterback who's still there, Benny Guevara, and the kid played his butt off, and Notice played their butt off. But you can't take that big of a piece out and not really feel a ripple effect unless you're Kendrick. You know what I mean? They've been that team, Notice, for the past several years where the conference as a whole being down, I don't think has done them a lot of favors. I think that tests that they could have used that in years past they've gotten when Idaho City has been what Idaho City normally is. I mean, that's a brawl. When Wilder is what Wilder normally is, that's a brawl. In the last couple of years, it hasn't been. Both those programs have been kind of resetting. So Notice is kind of, I don't want to say sleepwalked through the season because that's not fair to Notice and their kids and their staff, but they've been able to cruise a little bit, and then they've gotten to the playoffs and it's ratcheted up 2 or 3 levels on them, and they've just had a hard time answering that bell. They have the pieces to do it. They have the players. Coach Kirkland, you mentioned the coaching. Joe Woodland, the head coach there, does a fantastic job. And they need, when they get into the playoffs, that's where this Valley game is going to come in handy, because Valley is a team that's playing for its playoff life this weekend. They need this game pretty badly. And so they're going to give Notice everything they have, which is going to give Notice a good set for, a good look for the playoffs when those get going.
And one of the fun things about playing someone from out of league, out of conference, is you can open up that playbook. Teams can scout you really well, but you don't know really how fast or how tough kids are until you match up on that field, and that playbook can open wide up, and it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that Notice Valley game was one that I was I'm not on a game this weekend. It's state soccer, a few other things, so I was kind of hang back and stuff. But I thought about going to do that, and I think that would have been a fun one. Now it turns out I'm going to Eastern Idaho to do some Grid Kid Championships on Saturday, so I'm leaving tomorrow. But that Notice Valley game is going to be, one that I wish I could watch. It's going to be a ton of fun. But speaking of that, there's that Tri-Valley game, guys, that I want. Logan, you've done Garden Valley 2 weeks in a row. Will, you said you've seen Tri-Valley play. Garden Valley's playing Tri-Valley for 2nd and 3rd. What can you guys do? Let's start with Will on the Tri-Valley side. Kind of preview that matchup for everybody that's going to be played tomorrow night.
They've got a couple home run hitters in Clayton Harper, the 1A 100-meter state champion, and I watched him against Lewis County a couple weeks ago, and he had a couple plays, just sweet plays, nothing super tricky or super special about it, no real secrets. And just look at him, and he's just got a gear that not many 1A kids have. And if he gets the edge, and Coach Kirkland, we talked about this young man a couple of weeks ago, he reminds me a lot of Monty Hicks, the Idaho City running back from the early 2000s, where if he gets the corner, don't bother chasing him. Just send your PAT team on the field because it's over. It's done. And then Jace Wagner, the quarterback, he's a nice player. He's a young player. He's a sophomore. He can throw the ball a bit. He can definitely is an adept runner. And then Gage Warren, another young man who's he wasn't at 100% a couple of weeks ago when we saw him, from what I understand, but a very talented two-way player. They're explosive. And if you don't play good assignment football and if you don't tackle, Tri-Valley is going to gash you, and they're going to put up big yards and big points.
Okay, Logan, you go ahead and preview Garden Valley, but Will, I have to tell you, the funniest thing you said right there was bring out your PAT team. This is the 8-man Prepcast. This isn't 11-man.
Garden Valley will bring out a PAT.
Garden Valley, yes, boy. My timing sucks tonight. Or it's
way to go, Paul.
Look at it. Yeah, Garden Valley's probably got the best kicking team of an 8-man program we've seen in years, right, Logan?
Yeah, Timo can get out there and boot it, man. He there's been a few extra points I've seen over the last few weeks that would have been good from 35 or 40 yards. He definitely, clears the post. I always joke, I'm like,
from up there, right?
Sorry.
Timo's an old family name from up in Garden Valley?
No, he's actually an foreign exchange student from Germany.
Yes.
So,
do they still chant his name when it's time to kick, like the bench and the crowd and everybody?
They don't. I heard that story, but they, at least the last 2 weeks, they haven't done that. Now,
bummer.
Albeit there wasn't much opportunity last week against Council. And that's a whole nother.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that until we have.
No, we got time. We got time. But Garden Valley, they got to shore up the defense. That's what worries me in this game, right? That Tri-Valley, I've heard Will talk all about them and how great they are on offense. They're explosive. Garden Valley is too. They want to keep the ball on the ground, right? They're going to roll Tacoma Kelly out as much as possible and let him do it with his legs. And if he can find the gap, he'll run it. If not, he'll throw it to somebody downfield. They've got multiple options at receiver. Brown out there, he can catch it. And then on the ground, they're going to line up and they're going to plow it through with Korn, right? Trevor Korn is going to rumble through. And that's one thing, the stark difference, right? Horseshoe Bend could not bring him down in that game 2 weeks ago. That he would run through and he would fight through the first 2 or 3 guys. And I'm sure Coach Kirkland probably appreciates a guy like that, right? That it's hard to bring down. But then on the opposite side, Council, that didn't happen. Council brought him down, and it was tough for Garden Valley to put any points on. They contained Kelly, and so that's something to watch out for. Will Tri-Valley be able to contain Tacoma? I swear I did the game 2 weeks ago, and I said all the Kelly names. I said Covey, I said Gavin, I said Tacoma. I can't keep them straight. There's too many.
Like your own kids when they're in trouble.
Miles, no, Owen, no Parker. But
I think it can be safe just saying Parker and it's probably going to be Parker.
It's actually Miles. That's the one that's he's usually the one. But
every time that meeting, it's always Parker, get out of the
fridge. Yeah, he's just the one that's always around. But that's my thing with this game, right? Is that Garden Valley can score. But even in that game to Horseshoe Bend, in a game that was pretty much over, they couldn't just get that stop. And Horseshoe Bend was still around. They kept scoring. That fourth quarter took an hour because Horseshoe Bend kept punching it in. They just wouldn't go away. And I was waiting to see that final punch from Garden Valley right in that game to just finish them off. And they just kept sneaking with it. And so that would be my opinion. I don't know what you would say, Will, but I mean, I would almost lean towards Tri-Valley in this game for that reason, because I think they're going to score.
I mean, I'd like to hear from Coach Kirkland on this. As a guy who's had a couple prolific offenses in his career, it's a lot of times when you get a couple of teams that are really good at throwing haymakers like these two, who can mix in a couple of stops, and that's probably going to be the team that I would guess wins the game.
Yeah, I think you got to make right now it's coming down to who makes the fewest mistakes, of course, in games that are tight like that, and offenses that are like like those guys call. I know Yearsley's got some good experience, and he loves rolling that quarterback out, run around and finding somebody that's open. He's really good at that. But Tri-Valley seems to have some good grounding going on right now with the speed to back it up and putting points on the board. So I think it's going to come down to the fewest mistakes and maybe the best coaching and the best play calls.
Well, let me ask you this, guys. A lot of times when you've got two teams matched up like that, everything – I always get confused. Everything Coach said is true. But one thing I've seen is special teams make a huge difference. Special teams can make that one, that two really big plays to get the ball back or kick it deep, whatever they can do, pin them on the 5-yard line. If special teams can come out, sometimes they're the ones that actually make a big difference if you're going to get the win or the loss in a game like that. So between those two, Will, Logan, special teams, you said, Logan, they've got a kicker, but it's not always just a kicker on special teams. It's everybody else. So talk to me. How does special teams?
But here's the thing, Garden Valley Council, I think, converted one of their 2-point conversions that entire game. Maybe one. If it wasn't one, it was none. I think they got one. Garden Valley could stop that extra point attempt. They were very good at that. They did it against Horseshoe Bend. They did it against Council, even though they lost. And if it comes down to that, we've seen a lot of games. It doesn't matter the classification that come down to that. And they've got a kicker. They don't have to punch it in. They don't have to pick up 3 yards. They can boot it, and they can, and he's effective. And so, yeah, it could come down to it. And I mean, the big story with this one is the winner of this game gets a home game in the playoffs. It's a big deal. You are at home that opening week, and you are going to play the second place team from District 2, right? So you're going to get we talked about it earlier, probably whether it's Deary or Timberline, you're going to get one of them more than likely having to come down here. If you lose this game, you have to go on the road and play the second place team, either Clark Fork or Lakeside. So, a couple of games we've talked about, it's a big, right? We talked about Mullen having to go on the road a lot and how that factors in. I think either one of these teams has a great shot, even on the road, up at a Clark Fork or at a Lakeside, but you definitely would probably rather be home on opening weekend. So, lots of storylines. And, if you win this game, if you can get through that to that next round, you play the winner of District 5-6 in that next game, which if you're looking at it on paper, I think I would rather play them than Camas County, who most likely is going to win District 4.
Yeah, I think that the 2-3 game here, not that it doesn't matter who wins, but you're popping the champagne with the 1972 Dolphins that you're not on the same side of the bracket as Kendrick. You feel like you have a little bit easier path to maybe make a deep playoff run, whether that means you have to go to Clark Fork or whether that means you stay at home and you play Lewis County. I think that I think both teams very quietly, when no one was listening, would agree, you want to win the district championship, that you want to win the long pin. There's pride in that. But both those teams right now are looking at Council saying, have fun on that side of the bracket, because that side of the bracket is lining up to be a beast.
All right. Hang on, Logan. Crack your knuckles. Hang on.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I got to introduce this, Logan. So Logan has been fired up on Council. Not on Council, but the situation that Council is in. Okay. Logan, I'm going to let you explain it. And then I really want to get some perspective from Lane as a coach, and then from Will as a longtime advocate of all of this. Now, remember that 1AD1s have moved on to the Max Preps rankings. 1AD2 is the only bracket, I think one of the only brackets left in any sport that's the old school, right? You know where your seed is going to be on the bracket. So in 1AD1 with the Max Preps rankings, I'm going to say the word that triggers Logan and go, Council and Max Preps, go.
Yeah. Well, so in this, I would love to hear, Coach Kirkland, your point of view on this. I'm going
to jump in real quick again. The people that are watching, if you've got questions, comments, shout outs, kick them into the comments as you're watching, and we'll put them up on the air, especially when we get into this topic of Council. So, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Logan. Go ahead.
So Will, you hit on it, right? Council wins that game against Garden Valley and punches their ticket They win the division, they win their district, whatever. And all they do is set up a second round date with Kendrick. And I said this on the Treasure Valley Prepcast, and I know nobody wants to hear a millennial say these words, but that's not fair. It's just, from my point of view, that is just brutal, and I get it. And you play who's in front of you. If you want to win a championship, you got to go through the best. But
talking points.
It really, I feel like when we go to Max Preps, is it perfect? No. And you're going to talk to 8 people and get 8 different answers on what the best format is. But we've seen, at least towards the end, we have the best teams left, and we're not going to have that. We're going to be missing one of the best 3 teams on semifinal weekend. And that's, I don't think that's up for debate. I think that is what it is. And I can't believe Council doesn't get as much love in the media poll. Their 3 losses have come to Kendrick, Butte County, and Grace. Those are their 3 losses. And people are just kind of ignoring them. And that was a very good football team that I saw last week against Garden Valley. Yeah. And they're a team that should, I think, have that. We're going to miss out on a Camas County Council opportunity to play for a state championship. That those 2 playing each other, that would be an awesome game. I've seen both of them play this year. I think that would be the best, one of the best games on the bracket altogether. And Council, they're going to be sitting at home while a team that is not even in the ballpark with them is playing in the semifinals. And so that it just doesn't always sit. That just doesn't sit right with me with that. And the thing is, Council is not going to complain about it. They're just going to get up and, if they win that first round game, which I would expect them to do, they're going to go up there and they're going to give Kendrick their best shot. But that doesn't take away from the fact that is, it just, when you look at it, you could put Camas County has been number 2 all year long, right? But I really think, seeing them both, that Council, there's no reason that they couldn't be in that conversation for that number 2 spot. And we could potentially see 1 versus 2 in the quarterfinals. And I think that's not, to those kids for Council or Kendrick, let's say Council beats Kendrick, right? That should be a championship game or a semifinal matchup, right? I think that I'll get off my soapbox, but I know the guys in Council have been looking at that, and they might not want to say anything about it and look petty or whatever, because
that's what you're
us, and that's what I'm for. I'll take it. I have no shame. I love to complain, so here I am. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts, Coach Kirkland. I don't know if you guys were ever in a situation like that where you got a 1 versus 2 in the quarterfinals or something similar, and how you deal with that. And you're just going to go out and do your best, but there's something about playing a state championship game that even if you don't win it, you're there. You played for a state championship that potentially one team won't get a shot at.
Right. My thoughts on that are, and being in the D2 for a long time, and having a set bracket before you could see where you were going to end up in and know if that was going to happen or not. I don't know if I've seen that happen in that bracket in a quarterfinal that I can recall. I'm sure it possibly has, but usually that team gets to the semis and you get a shot at least going to the title game. It is unfortunate that one of those great teams has to stay home. It can happen in Max Preps as well. Even in a semifinal game, you don't get the 2 best teams in the state championship. And
you're not talking about last year, are you, Coach? You're not? No, of course not. Of course not.
Anyway, that's just the way that it goes, and you just got to play your best game. And the road to the championship goes right through the middle of the sewer. So hang on and do your best and finish with pride wherever you end up, and just be proud of where you came from.
Now, Will, one thing that I think Idaho needs to kind of wrap their heads around or change their thinking on, now that we're using those rankings versus everything else, is that rankings or the Max Preps seedings, right? They're not rankings, even though you would hope they are, but you're looking at seedings versus rankings, and they're 2 completely different things. And unfortunately, everybody looks at rankings and goes, well, here's 1 through 8. How come number 18 is here and whatnot. But unfortunately, I don't think it's a good thing. I think that we are at a point now where rankings do not equal seedings when it comes to state tournaments. So, go ahead and kick in your thoughts on that with what Logan was saying about council and stuff. But you've been in the sports media, longer than I have. I met you on the sidelines at a Homedale game in 2000 before we were even, 5 years before we were broadcasting. I was taking pictures. You had a $100,000 camera on your shoulder.
100,000 pounds, not $100,000.
But that's where we met, right? And so you and I have been in the game as far as sports media a long time. We've seen a lot of changes happen. We've seen good things and bad things. So I'm really anxious to hear what your take is on that.
I agree with what you're saying in that rankings that are generated by people are rarely, if ever, going to match what a computer is spitting out based on data. And I think that one of the biggest problems, issues, pick your word, is that we don't know exactly what goes into that formula. So if you're a coach for one of these teams and you're trying to kind of figure out in your mind, how do I put my team in the best possible position to do well in these rankings? Like if I lose, is it going to matter if I lose by 8 or by 12? Is it what's going to matter? What's not going to matter? I think that hurts. The one thing I struggle with, and Logan, going back to what you said, and Coach, maybe having been in the D2 ranks for a long time, maybe you have a good answer that I've never heard. I'm fine with kind of predetermining that opening round, if you will. But then at that point, once you've played the opening round, how hard can it possibly be to get a representative from each district on a Zoom call Sunday morning for an hour to seed those remaining teams 1 through 8? How hard can it be? How long can it take? I know that maybe, and I'm throwing you in there just for sake of example, Coach Kirkland, maybe that's not something you would want to do. Maybe that's not something that Mr. Cook would want to do. But determine a representative to represent your district and go in there, and if you have to be an advocate for your rival, you're an advocate for your rival. But what you're doing is you're really advocating for the best matchups, 1 through 8, to give the teams that deserve the number 1 ranking, the number 2 ranking, the number 3 ranking, whatever it is, get the right team on the right line going forward. And there just seems to be a resistance to doing that. But Paul, I know you've said this before, they can seed how many hundreds of wrestlers every year for the state tournament, and we can't seed 8 football teams or 8 basketball teams.
And it's always a brawl. I mean, I've actually been in the IHSA offices years and years ago, obviously, but when that was going on, and it's my kid did this and they beat him, who lost to him. And so getting some consensus. Do you just want coaches? Do you want any media? Which media? Who do you leave out? Who do you bring in? So, I mean, I don't think there's any simple answer, but I think there's maybe a rightish answer out there as well. Another thing that I don't think we've talked about is those max preps, at least for football now, it's regular season. And so, conference champion, great, you can get in there. But, you're looking at somewhere it might not matter as much. And Logan, going back to council, does it do us a favor by losing this particular week versus winning? One thing we saw the first year of these rankings is, and this is Paul Kingsbury talking, I saw sportsmanship being vacated in place of making sure we score a ton of points so that our ranking at the end of the year is higher. And we saw Middleton, I think it was Middleton, lose because they kept trying to score to get more points. And instead of just doing what teams normally do, pull off a little bit in the game, conservative. And so in my opinion, sportsmanship got replaced with needing to score points for rankings. And whether it's understood or not, I think it still sucks from that point of view. Maybe I'm just the old grumpy guy telling everybody to get off my lawn, but that's how I see it. And that's how I've seen it play out on the field too. But Logan, we were actually talking about teams that you know, it might be better if we lose this week, looking at down the road. You know, coach, do not saying you ever did, ever, but would that enter a coach's mind of looking downfield? You know, the goal is to get a championship. It would help us if maybe we didn't win this game. I mean, is that something coaches would even look at? And don't be the coach that, you know, just says what everybody wants to hear. Be honest. Not saying you did it.
Right. So, yeah, we've had that discussion before, but we've never talked about wanting to lose a game ever.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, if we lost this, then we would end up on the top of the bracket now instead of the bottom, and we'd have a greater chance to go maybe all the way. Just discussion only, never following through on that. I know my first 15, 16 years, Harry was heavily involved in sending a proposed bracket to the state. The Sawtooth sent that in districts 4, 5, and 6 year after year after year until the last 4 to 6 years, where District 2 and 1 were like, hey, hold on a second here. Maybe let's cross the bracket this thing a little bit more. We want to play into it. So if you're interested in changing a bracket, you need to be involved with the IHSAA and visiting with ADs around the state and go to those meetings and work things out. Otherwise, whoever's running the show is going to keep running the show.
Right.
And that's kind of how it's been.
ADs and coaches, you know, those are the guys that have the power, and they're busier than heck, but those are the ones that they are the squeaky wheels that need to get greased sometimes. So, you know, right. Let me ask, how come from, you know, you were involved in all this, how come 1A D2 still does the predetermined bracket?
I think because they're so small, and I think people care as much as anybody else, but I think it's more about a home proud. Every district gets a shot. It's a little more fair to enter the playoffs in that direction. And we're going to go with the basic format used back in the 1700s.
You know, and the three of us are the only ones that were alive back then. Logan is just a young pup.
When the Constitution was written.
Yes.
You remember that? That was a good time. That was a good time. Now, when I was asking you that, it kind of seemed like I was egging you on a little bit, but I wanted you to answer that way because my follow-up question was, is it fair that that's even a question coaches have to deal with is, hey, if we lose this, it's going to put us in a better position. I mean, shouldn't the system encourage the best play every week from every team?
Yeah, I don't know any coach that has thrown a game in football. And if they have, they should have been fired the next day.
Right.
Their town and their kids should believe in it more than that. So that's just the way the system is right now. And I don't really see it changing necessarily at the D2 level, the 1A level now.
All right. Well, we were actually going to talk about council. We got Logan's take. Will, did we actually get your take on that, or did we kind of skip over it?
My take on what in particular?
On the council issue with as far as where they might end up on the bracket.
I have a fairly general take in that I understand the frustration, and I wonder why we can't find a little better way to do it. But
can't we all just get along?
Once, you know, when you've got a team, and this is the coach in me speaking because I'm a baseball coach. When you go to the state tournament in any sport, when there's a 1 million pound just Hulk like Kendrick, you're gonna, if you want to win a state championship, odds are you're gonna have to beat him. My mindset, personally, as a coach, I want him early. Okay, I want to get him early. I don't want a kid to get a sprained ankle or something, and now he's out of the mix. I don't want them to get into a groove, whatever. If I have a chance to punch them in the early rounds, I want to punch them in the early rounds. That's my perspective as a coach. However, I understand the dilemma. I understand the frustration. And I guess I don't understand, like I said, why we can't come up with, we were talking about this 3 weeks ago, Coach, that Mullen, St. Regis is that top line on the bracket no matter what. So no matter who they're playing, they're going to be the quote-unquote home team, and it's going to have to be somebody that goes north. And not that Mullen St. Regis is undeserving. They've had a wonderful season, but to know that going into the season, that all I have to do is be the best team in this league, whether I'm 4-4 or whether I'm 8-0, I'm going to be that top line and have that home game all the way through. Or in Council's case, I can win my league. I can win the long pin. I can get a banner to hang up in my gym that says I won the long pin again. But then I have to play Kendrick right out of the chute. I would like to see if we can find a way to avoid that. And it's easier said than done. Coach, you made some great points. I'm sure travel comes into the equation, trying to make that as equitable as possible, because, jumping on one of those yellow buses for 12 hours is not in the best interest of anybody. So I understand Council's frustration. I understand the long pins frustration in this particular year, in this particular instance, but there's no rule that says next year Council won't be the team that teams want to get away from. And that's the ebb and flow of 8-man football.
Yeah, it really is. Now, Coach, did you guys actually take a yellow bus, or were you guys chartered?
I don't remember. we did a lot of charters. I don't know.
I know back in my day, it was yellow bus.
Yeah, we usually charter.
No seatbelts, because seatbelts are for losers. Except the bus.
No heater either, or no air conditioning. It was
unless you're sitting on the wheels, and then you're dying of heat. Right?
Yeah, one of the two.
Hot.
Yep.
Hot. All right.
Well, we talked a lot about the D2 bracket, right? But if you look at the D1, I like the way that this one is, right? If you win, you get a bye. You win your conference, you take the bye. And I was listening to your show last week, guys, and Coach, you were even saying like you didn't like the bye. You just want to keep going. But there, this one you get a bye, and then we've got some of these at-large bids, right? That are folks that are going to sneak in, and it seems like some teams played their way in this week. Like I think Cary might have punched their ticket in, right? They had a big win, and they potentially punched their ticket in at the D1 level as an at-large. Because I mean, there's been years we've looked at it where it was last year that Lighthouse was technically in, and they were 0-6 up until that last week, and then they finally dropped out of what would be in. But I mean, they play Raft River this week, and a game I think is winnable for them, right? And they could go from being on the outside looking in 2 weeks ago after that tough loss to Glens Ferry to all of a sudden now in for Cary.
Yeah, that was a heck of a game against Murtaugh. Boys really rallied. It was senior night, and we don't have many seniors. And Nick Versus and Owen Park committed their entire body and their fortunes and goodwill to making sure that they were going to win that game. Owen Park had 18 tackles and 4 sacks, and a lot of those tackles were hard and physical. But it was playing for our life, and now we head to Raft River. And still playing for our life, and we'll see how that ends up with 2 good teams there on the road with Raft River senior night.
And speaking of Raft River, we had talked about Waymeyer from Butte County getting injured. There was a lot of support going out for them. Raft River painted number 13 on their field, which is very cool in honor of Waymeyer. So good for them. I like seeing that sportsmanship between rivals, really. There's things bigger than football out there, and it's good when those communities can come together like that. That's probably one of my favorite things about 8-man football, small town football, is tell you what, when you are on the field, you're at war, right? You're black, you're white, you're red, you're blue, doesn't matter. And whatever color you're sporting, it's enemies. But as soon as you get off, you know what, you care about each other. You would walk across burning coal to help the other town out if you had to. So, you live it all the time, Coach. From the outside looking in, that's got to be my favorite part of 8-man football. It's just the small town camaraderie.
Right. And on early Monday, Chad Evans texted me wanting Coach Saili's phone number, and that message to be conveyed was, hey, we're going to feed you guys after the game. So stick around and make sure that you bring your whole bus load there. So pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's way cool. All right, before we head to District 4, I have to keep going back to Brandon's notes, or else he'll be mad at me if we don't use some of them. Notice is there, right? The second playoff spot come down to Idaho City at Rimrock. Brandon really wanted one of us to go do that game down in Bruno. Winner gets it, loser does not, as far as that second playoff spot. So I have not seen those two teams play, Idaho City and Rimrock. One of you got Logan. You did an Idaho City game, right?
No, we haven't done Idaho City. We did one last year against Notice, but no, I haven't seen the Wildcats yet this season.
Okay, so Will, in that game between Idaho City and Rimrock, going for second, who comes out?
I don't know much about Coach Rober and Idaho City this year. They've kind of been the mysterious little mountain team about 45 minutes outside of Boise there. But with Rimrock, they've got one of the state's better all-around performers in Ronaldo Gomez. That young man has been a regular in the 3 stars column that we write for Idaho Sports every week. And he's over 1,000 yards rushing, and I think he might be over 1,000 yards passing now. And he's one of their leading tacklers, and he returns kicks and he returns punts. He's one of those kids that when you're just talking about God-given talent and God-given athleticism, he'd fit on just about any 8-man team in the state. You know, I think any coach would make some room for the skills that he has. So, you know, and I'm going to give a little bit of an edge to Rimrock because the game's at home, because of Gomez. The thing that I looked up that I think is, I don't want to say funny, but that's wild to me. The last playoff game that Rimrock won was the 1993, I believe, state championship game when they were an 11-man football team. That's the last time Rimrock won a playoff game. They've been to the playoffs a few times since then. They haven't won a game since then. So you want to talk about a drought, there's a drought.
You know, the last time happened in 1993 was when New Plymouth won the state boys basketball championship. Just throwing that in there. Man,
if they would have had a better bench, they would have won by more.
Hey, they won because they had the good bench. I mean, I actually had surgery on this shoulder a couple of weeks ago from throwing it out, whipping the towel around so many games from the bench.
Just holding that Gatorade up there. Somebody had to do it.
Yes.
It was whipping the towel.
Yeah. Holding on to everybody's warm-up pants.
And they were that hard, polyester back then.
With the snaps, the breakaway snaps.
There was no Velcro.
It added up, man. Those snaps.
One time I actually got surprised. It might have been senior night, and I was shocked that he's like, Kingsbury. I'm like, oh, crap. So I went to take off my warm-ups, and I didn't take my shoes off first, and they only snapped down to the shoes for whatever reason. So I'm sitting there trying to get my pants off, and they're stuck around my ankles, and everybody's around the circle, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? I'm getting there soon. Yeah, that was pretty much the highlight of my senior year.
Right? Let me one-up you there, Paul, since you said that when the cat's away, the mice will play. So, Brandon, you can enjoy this one. Coach Logan, I apologize. When I was in high school, I was a 5'11" center because I couldn't dribble and I couldn't shoot. So what I could do is grab a few rebounds and foul. So I'm 5'11". Okay, the 3 guys that were ahead of me were 6'5", 6'5", and 6'4". Translation: I never played. So we have a home game one night, and we're playing the number 1 or number 2 team in the league. We were like 3rd or 4th. So, I mean, we were a good team, but we weren't. Anyway, I didn't even put on my shorts under my warm-ups. Didn't even put them on. What does Murphy's Law say is going to happen?
Yeah.
All 3 bigs got in foul trouble. So at halftime, the last 4 minutes of the first half, I was literally sweating on the bench because like 2 of the 3 bigs had 3 fouls already, and the other guy I think only had 1. And I'm like, if he picks up another one, the coach is going to call me in. What am I going to do? We get to halftime. I have never run so fast in my life to beat the team into the locker room so I could get my shorts on under my warm-up pants before the coach got to the locker room.
Nice. And
Wound up not playing.
Did you get in the game?
Not playing at all. Nope.
Yeah,
But at least I didn't go out there in my, Yoda underoos.
You had those too?
Probably.
What are the odds?
I don't remember.
What are the odds of that? All right, gents, let's go to District 4. We're halfway there, and we're barely living on a prayer. Barely. So, all right, District 4, guys. Lighthouse, Cary, Murtaugh, Valley. Lighthouse 4-2. Everybody else 3-3. In that scenario, reading Brandon's notes again, Cary would finish third thanks to the head-to-head wins over Murtaugh and Valley. Murtaugh would then take fourth thanks to win over Valley. This is definitely the scenario Panther fans should be cheering for. Is that right, Coach?
Yeah. Let's see what happens. They got to play it out. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, now he also says we could see this happen. Murtaugh beats Lighthouse, Cary beats Raft River. Then you've got Murtaugh 4-2, and everyone else at 3-3. And that would be a coin flip, correct?
That's what it sounds like. I don't know the rules on that. Yeah.
One thing I've never been a fan of is the coin flip. I mean, your whole season boils down to
that.
Never been a fan of that. Never. But I don't know what else you do, right? Draw straws, same thing. I just don't know how else you do it besides a coin flip. But yeah, it could be very interesting after. I always like it when the last week of the regular season means something. There's nothing worse than the last week of the regular season going, well, everybody's locked in. I got a call this week, and my phone number is not public. It is. I don't give my phone number out. I don't answer the phone when I don't know the number. And I got a call.
You do know the number.
I barely answer it when I do know the number. You're right.
Yeah.
But I get a call from a number, and I don't answer it. Like 5 minutes later, I get a call from that same number. When that happens, I'm like, oh, they must know me. Maybe it's a delivery. I was actually expecting a delivery of a shipment of ammo that I had ordered. Sometimes they say, hey, your dogs are out. I answer it. And is this Idaho Sports customer service? Ah, crud. Yes, kind of. Sure. And
customer
they were
service?
Yeah.
Because we have that. We have that.
Yes.
That's on the 6th floor. I'm on the 10th. I'm sorry.
Okay,
they're way below.
But they wanted to know. He said, on my phone, it shows you guys are broadcasting Sugar, Salem, South Fremont. And my brother-in-law's phone says you're doing a Skyline Blackfoot, I think. And I said, yeah, we're not doing the Sugar, South Fremont game. Obvious reasons. And he said, okay, I get it. Got off the phone. And I haven't answered my phone since. But the point there was we schedule games at the beginning of the season thinking, okay, we really hope these are good games. And when we get to the end, sometimes we move things around because, Sugar, Salem, South Fremont might turn out, it might not be the best game on the schedule, so to speak, for the last game. So I really like that a lot of these conferences are really coming down to the finish. It can really change things with this team and the work, all kidding aside, the work that Brandon puts into this is phenomenal. He spends hours upon hours putting together all this stuff. So do yourself a favor, make sure you go to Idaho Sports and read that bracketology article that's on there. It's a wealth of info. So looking at it, Murtaugh, Lighthouse, Cary, Valley, we've talked about these teams a lot coming through. Which scenario do you see it happening? Do you see where Lighthouse is 4-2? You see Murtaugh 4-2, guys? Logan?
Who knows? It's just shuffled around. I feel like the middle, right? Because Cary, right, beats Valley. 8-6 was that game. Valley beats Lighthouse. They kind of romp through them. Murtaugh's had big wins and big losses, so I have no clue. It just is a toss up, right? At this point, I think Cary probably takes care of business against Raft River. But then Lighthouse Murtaugh, that game is, I think, is a 50-50 split. I don't know what you guys over there think, Coach, if you guys are thinking that that's kind of how it is looking, but at least from my view, that one looks like it's very up in the air. But the thing is, what's good if you're District 4 and not good if you're District 2 is that even if you lose this game, there's a couple of at-large bids at stake, and they're probably both coming from District 4. And you could see a 2 or 3 win Cary team in at that last spot if they are an at-large team over a 5-win Prairie team up north. So that's just the max preps for you. Now that's because of how strong District 4 is, right? I mean,
yeah.
State championships have run through District 4 for the champion for the past 3 years, and in what 2 of those it was against a conference opponent, and last year the state championship might have been in the semifinal that nobody's talking about, right? And it was 2 District 4 teams. So it is what it is. It's the best league in the state at that level, right? And so even if it doesn't go the way, if Valley ends up on the bottom and they don't get the auto bid, if Cary doesn't get the auto bid, I think all teams are probably feeling pretty good, at least at the at-large situation.
Well, if you look at the standings right now, it's Lighthouse, Murtaugh Valley, Cary going into this weekend. So Cary's 2 and 3 on the bottom. In one scenario, Cary could move up a spot into third. In that other scenario, where Lighthouse beats Murtaugh, Cary beats Raft River, bam, they're 3 and 3 in second place, right? Or at least tied with a chance to win that coin flip, So everything, especially you get those smaller conferences like that, but in District 4, Coach, everything, it's really do or die when it comes to that last week of the season.
It is, yeah, and it is exciting. That does get you ready for the playoffs, but you do know you got to play your best football, or you're gonna suffer in the bracket, or maybe not make that bracket. So the Lighthouse Murtaugh game, I agree with Logan. It's a 50-50, and I think it's going to come down to who has the greatest mental fortitude. I know both teams had their heads down when the butt kickings were on, and a little before that, from what I witnessed and from what I heard. From the Valley coaches as well the other day. So mental fortitude and the fewest mistakes. Likely the same between Cary and Raft River. On the road with Raft River senior night, Cary will have to play a good error-free game and execute cleanly, more cleanly on offense than they have throughout the season. Defense has been scoring a lot of those touchdowns. The first score we had against Murtaugh here was a scoop and score on a blocked punt, and the second was a kickoff run back. So we've got to get that ball across the goal line on offense as well. But Raft River has a great scheme. They have some great play callers and have some great kids in those positions. So all 4 of those, or 2 of those games, are going to be great games to see where we end up.
Now, Will, we've talked about what happens, in a 2, 3, 4 spot. We haven't talked about Oakley, who's already clinched up the number 1 spot. They're number 1 in the 1A D1 poll. I think some people, and you wrote the previews coming in for all the 8-man teams in the state. Looking back before the season started, is Oakley where you thought they would be as a team?
Yeah, I don't think they got there the way I expected them to, but yeah, I think so. Kyler Robinson has done a really nice job stepping into that role as quarterback, taking over for Porter Pickett, who was an all-state performer last year for Oakley. And the thing that I think, whether it's been, I assume it's by design, but I've never talked to Coach Brendan Jones about this, so I can't say unilaterally it's by design. They've got so many good playmakers when you're talking about Isaac Cranny and you're talking about Bridger Duncan. You're talking about just all these kids that can make plays. Yeah. They're very Kendrick-esque in that regard. They've kind of been able to bring Bryce Sevier along. I don't want to say slowly, but they've kind of been able to pick their spots with him. They haven't had to lean on him and take a bunch of tread off the tires by having him carry the ball 25, 30 times a game and go play middle linebacker. And so they've picked their spots with him. They needed to make a statement last week against Valley. And so Sevier comes out and has a fantastic ball game, picks up 5 touchdowns and a couple of 2-point conversion runs when the team really needed it. So, to have that ability to be a really balanced team in the postseason where, say you like to throw the ball all over the place. place. It's a driving rainstorm and the field's a mud pit. Okay. You need to be able to kind of tighten it up a little bit and run the football.
Yeah.
Oakley's one of those teams that I think is going to have the versatility and the talent to do either one of those things as circumstances and as defensive schemes dictate.
All right. Well, District 4 is going to be a fun one to watch, as always, in that 1A D1. Let's talk about the D2s. And we have quite a bit. We haven't said much about Dietrich this year, Hagerman. We've talked about Camas, Logan, and Camas is a team that you've gotten to see this year, correct? Have you seen Yeah, you and I were.
Yeah, we were there together when they played Butte County.
You were with me. I don't remember much of that game because I was troubleshooting and logging into guys' laptops the whole time, and so you really had to carry that. Well, like always, you were carrying the broadcast while I was doing other things. But again, Camas, kind of like I think I said Lewis County was kind of equal to the flyover state in District 2. Camas has kind of been that way in District 4, but not anymore. The Mushers are for real.
Yeah, and I mean, I talked so much about Council that I glossed over what Camas County has done.
You were just waiting to get here.
They were right in that game with Butte County. They led at halftime. I mean, it's back and forth affair. That was a wild game. I think it was 4 straight offensive plays went for touchdowns, 4 in a row. Camas County scored, and then Butte County scored, and then Camas, and then Butte. It was wild. They just ran out of gas in that game.
Right.
Butte County's a big team. They just ran out of gas, and they're a team that can make a run to the state championship and can go up and play Kendrick. And I think they could probably hang with them and that they could be there. They're a good team. And this might be the year for them to make that push. I mean, they've kind of just rolled through their schedule so far. But I'm curious to see Dietrich and Hagerman, right? When we get into playoff time, how are they going to look? Hagerman's beaten some folks, right, out of conference. They took care of some folks on the road even, and they might be a fun team to watch and a dangerous one. I don't know what you guys think, maybe who to look for outside of. Everybody knows Camas County, right? But outside of that, where those two teams, Dietrich and Hagerman, where they may be able to make a mark at state.
Well, Dietrich can definitely help themselves out playing Camas this weekend.
Yeah.
As Dietrich's 3-1, Camas scores 4-0. Hagerman, though, 3-1. And really after that, there's a drop-off. Castleford, 1-3, Hanson, 1-3, and Shoshone, 0-4 in conference. So you're right. Hagerman, 6-2. Dietrich, 5-2, hoping to make it 6-2. That Sawtooth Conference, 1-3, 1-4. There's a lot of talent in those 3 teams, Will. So behind Camas County, who do you see really picking it up after that? Dietrich again?
Well, Hagerman beat Dietrich head to head, so you have to at least, out of courtesy for that, you've got to give the Pirates their due. They are most likely going to end up as the 2 seed coming out of that division for the playoffs, and good for them. They've been slow building back to this for about 3 or 4 years now, so it's nice to see them able to finally get there. That said, Dietrich, it's coach. You've gone head to head with them a few times over the years. They just know how to win there. And Connor Perkins and Torgerson, the lineman, they've got some kids that can play some football. And if they are 4C, if they are on the 4C line in the playoffs, and I'm playing 4C in the first round, I'm not going to feel super comfortable about that matchup.
It would be Council. If it ended right now, that's what it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that District 4 has always produced some pretty good teams, even in the D2s there for a long time. And Dietrich seems to rise and find themselves every game that they progress throughout the year. So they're playing good football right now.
Well, if Camas does follow through, and if Camas beats Dietrich, it will be Camas, Hagerman, Dietrich. So there's your ABC coming through there. If Dietrich wins, if they pull out the upset, it forces a 3-way tie. It's been a tiebreaker scenario in the Sawtooth Conference with a Kansas City tiebreaker. Brandon says the league's ADs are exploring using other criteria, such as a point differential or a coin flip to resolve the tie. Coach, would you rather have a Kansas City playoff on a Friday afternoon at 5:00, or would you prefer a coin flip?
If it's for number one, we did a coin flip one time, actually, in 2015.
Really?
We did, and it worked out for us. We won the coin flip.
The double-headed quarter.
Yeah, I hate when that sneaks its way in there. Dang it.
It's in the trophy case, too.
Yes.
Yeah. I've never been in a Kansas City playoff, so I can't really speak to that. So,
with the Kansas City playoff, you're playing the week of your playoff game, right? So normally you're done. If you play on a Friday night, you're done, and then you can start preparing for the next week. If it's a tie, all of a sudden you're preparing against sometimes two other teams to start from the 20 and go on a Monday evening of the same week that you're playing. And you've seen it. Sometimes those 8-man teams are playing on a Thursday, in those early games. So to me, I would say the Kansas City playoff is more fair, but boy, I sure wouldn't want to get my kids out there, risking more injury, and they're still tired and not recovered from the week before heading into a playing game.
And that was our reasoning, was injury and preparation, and we felt confident in ourselves going to the next level there. So
I guess as long as everyone's on board with the coin flip, you can't really argue.
Right.
I'd probably be that one coach going, nope, everybody get on your bus Monday. We're going to play this thing. We're going to play it. All right, let's move east a little bit, guys. Eastern Idaho. It's kind of its own. I mean, Idaho is a weird state geographically. You've got your different, population centers. But Eastern Idaho, it goes anything past Raft River, and then you can go all the way south. Then you can go all the way north. But then you can also go up to, Butte County and Mackay and Chalice and those areas. So Eastern Idaho covers a big chunk with a lot of rural areas with some of the smaller teams. So Logan, I'm going to start with you with that Eastern Idaho. We saw Grace play last week. Didn't work out well for them. Asterisk, they were playing Kendrick. Do you see them bouncing back heading into, last game of the season into the playoffs? And I really want to talk what you saw with Grace, Kendrick aside.
Well, I wasn't at that game with you with Kendrick. It
was Will. You guys look alike.
Yeah. But right now. I haven't seen Grace outside of that, but we were talking about it with District 4, right? With a great end of the season where we get Grace Butte County, right, to cap things off. And it's a great matchup. Grace made a run to the state championship last year. There's no reason that either one of these teams can't as well. I think that, Logos is kind of up there, and we didn't really talk much about that district. We could jump back, but it's later. But, they've beaten who they've had in front of them, but they've kind of done it quietly and snuck into that number 2 spot. And I think more than in the past, that right now 1AD1, there's an opening, I think, to, Oakley has obviously rolled through. And maybe they're probably still, they're still all right at that top spot, but there's an opening to say who's going to cement themselves as the number 2. And the winner of this game Friday, they might have that inside track to that, or at least a step in the right direction, right? Whether it's Grace, whether it's Butte County, both of them have played similar tough. Both of them played Kendrick, right? Both went toe to toe, really kind of pushed those games. And when I look at it, if you want to compare apples to apples, right? I know it's not an exact, the law of translation. 1 year in college basketball, you could trace ISU to beating Duke because, they beat so-and-so who beat so-and-so who beat so-and-so. So Idaho State's better than Duke. But you look at that, right? Butte County, what they did against Kendrick, I thought their showing was more impressive than Grace's. And so when we look at this matchup this week, I would think potentially just on paper, maybe that Butte County probably has the edge there. But it's again, it's just like we talked about with that Murtaugh Lighthouse. This game's going to be a toss up.
Well, Will, now that I'm talking to Will,
yes,
after Logan butted in there,
Logan, big jerk.
The one thing that I think is a strength and a weakness is when, and I've said it before many times, is when you're a small school, your athletes are your athletes, right? Mm-hmm. And they play both sides. And Grace's quarterback, Kimball, great quarterback. He also had not only the official stats, but I guarantee he had the most tackles. During that game as well. I mean, he was on both sides every play. So that's great. But also when you get against a Butte County, when you get into the playoffs, how tough is that, for Grace to have your quarterback playing so much, get to the third, fourth quarter, it's got to be almost gassed.
Yeah, he was, and he played the whole game Friday. Grace didn't go really deep into the bench at his particular spots, and you're right. I never saw official stats, and Grace is one of those programs that plays it pretty close to the vest as far as sharing that type of information. But part of this was the nature of Kendrick hitting a lot of plays downfield. And Kimball plays a defensive back position. He probably had upwards of 15 tackles. And they were good tackles too. They weren't cheapies. He was having to go in there and bring down some big, strong runners. But he's a nice player. Cutler, the running back / linebacker, the Cleggs they've got some players for sure. The thing that I'm really curious about with this game is the emotional hangover of, they got bulldozed, and I'm willing to bet you if you were to talk to Coach Zane Hobart or a few of the Kendrick players, they'd tell you, hey, we flat out missed some stuff.
Yep.
I can think of 2 or 3 plays myself where, a receiver turned the wrong way, a pass was underthrown, a block was missed. Right. Otherwise, there's 50 more yards. And meanwhile, Grace, just until the fourth quarter, they just had a hell of a time getting anything going. And as was mentioned earlier, Butte County got down big early, fought their way back, and got back in the game. So I feel like you play the transitive properties like Logan was playing. And the fact that I'm just a big Butte County fan this year, I think that this is a team that has a chance to do something. They've made a change at quarterback. Keaton Archibald now at quarterback. They've moved Razor Duke to running back to take care of to highlight his running skills a little bit more.
Right.
And I think that if you put Oakley, Butte County, and Logos in a hat right now and pulled out any one of those 3 names and say, this is your state champion, I don't know that I'd be surprised. I think any one of the 3 of them, I think, are capable of doing it.
Would you use a Mountain Dew hat for that?
Coach Kirkland's, yes. Not yours, because you've been wearing that thing for a long time.
Oh, it's ratty. Trust me.
Yeah.
I feel weird wearing it tonight because you can't see the dirt, but it's,
you can see it.
Okay, good.
I can smell it.
Good. Yeah. It's seen some miles.
Yeah.
But you
put that out there for you, Will.
There you go. I like it.
New hat smells still. It's fantastic. Those Cleggs, Ty Clegg, big dudes. They're massive. And, they did their job during that Kendrick game. They laid some hits. They came through when they were supposed to. So coming into that, that's one thing that head coach Thorngren has to be looking at is, okay, protect our quarterback, guys. You have to give our quarterback time to do something. Instead of a 3-step drop, it's 3 steps looking up at the stars sometimes when that doesn't happen. And so that's going to be a fun game as well. We're talking about fun games at the end of the year all the time, but those are teams that we really saw. So Logan, looking more into the other teams in that conference, who do you see maybe getting placed on the bracket that might surprise some people?
You look down the list, right? 1A D1, the way it's set up. you're talking about District 5-6, right?
I am.
D1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one's going to go and the other is going to be an at-large.
They're going to be, and they're potentially the top at-large bid is going to come down. Potlatch and Kamei, and that's a game we kind of skipped over. Is the winner of that game potentially gets that top at-large bid. I think Potlatch is a few steps behind, but a win over Kamei that might boost them up. And if Potlatch wins that and it doesn't boost them up, then I think the loser of this game is the top at large. I think is how it'll sit, because right now it's Kamei, and if Kamei wins, I think they hold that spot, right? But the loser of this game more than likely comes in at that next will be that second at large in that at large bid area. Right. That they'll come in there, at least in the ranking side of things.
Right.
And so, I mean, it goes back, if you jump around there's going to be a team with a winning record more than likely left out of the playoffs because of that at large situation. But Butte County or excuse me, Grace, right now, the way it's set up, if Butte County were to win, they're the number 2 seed. They have a bye. Grace would be the 6th, and right now it would have Grace match up with Cary if everything was chalk and there was no dramatic changes. And you know what? That's I think they played this year. They played last year, right? That was 6 or 7-0, something like that. I'm sure you would know a lot better, Coach. But Grace will be rolling. That'll be a tough first round game for anybody.
Yeah, low scoring game like that in the 8-man ranks. That's my opinion. That's worse than a low scoring game in the 11-man games. It's just brutal. And it seemed like every time I would do an 8-man game, I'm like, I love 8-man because you always get those 68-52, scores, and then it ends up being a 12-6 or something. It's like, boy, how did we get here, and how do we get home as fast as we can?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but let's move a little bit further. Let's move further into 1AD2s now in Eastern Idaho. Rockland at North Gem, Water Springs at Mackey. If Rockland and Water Springs win, they get the 2 playoff spots. Rockland and Mackey win. There's a 3-way tie between Water Springs, North Gem, and Mackey for that last playoff spot. If North Gem upsets Water Springs, there's a 3-way tie for first place with Rockland, North Gem, and Water Springs. But if North Gem and Mackey both win, Rocky and North Gem get the 2 auto bids. Water Springs would fall from second to dead last. That's a bummer if you go from second to dead last.
You need an advanced analytics degree to understand all this.
Yeah, I actually had to look up a couple of those words, definitions.
Yeah.
And that's why Brandon gets paid the big bucks, is because he can do that. But what are the odds of that happening, going from second to last? And is that really a concern of Water Springs on paper? I mean, we're talking realistically here, not politically correct coach speak. Will, you're the best at doing that.
Coach speak, politically correct? No, I don't think Water Springs is thinking about it too much. I think it's the nature of having a 4 or a 5 team league when you're only playing a limited number of conference games. Is you can go anywhere from first to last in a week, depending on how things turn out. But for Water Springs, the thing that's great for them and the thing that's great for Mackey and the thing that's great for North Gem is they hold, to a certain degree, they hold their fate in their own hands. They go win a football game and they put themselves in a pretty good position to advance, any one of them. And I talked to Coach Hunter at Rockland earlier this week, and his team's playing some really good football right now. But they know that they can't just show up Friday and just assume that North Gem's going to roll over. North Gem has something to play for, and they've got some good players. So, that's going to be a brawl of an entire league, for that week is, when you've got the 4 teams, Clark County, opting basically out for all intents and purposes, playing 6-man games where they could. But the other 4 teams all have something to play for. And I think that's going to lead to some really intense football and some really interesting results.
I don't know who said what, but we pissed somebody off. They, instead of a like, they gave us the angry emoji on Facebook.
Wow.
So somebody said something. I don't know who. I'm going to blame Logan.
Yeah, it's probably me.
I'm the PC guy, so it can't be me.
You are the PC guy.
Here.
You make everybody happy. Everybody.
Well,
go ahead, or whoever.
You look at these standings. You look at these standings, right? And what could happen. I think this Mackey North Gym game, or Mackey Water Springs, excuse me, is not decided. I know Mackey sits at 0-2, but if you look at a common opponent, right? Let's look at North Gym, right? Mackey lost to them, but a close game, less than a score, and Water Springs beats North Gym by a score. Right. There's not much separation there. And Coach Kirkland, I don't know, maybe you can chime in on this. As a coach, do you look at that at all and say, man, we got a shot here? You know what? We went toe to toe with this team. They went toe to toe. We've got a shot right here with it because of how they matched up versus how we matched up.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, in A-man football, even 3-score separation is something you have a positive outlook on, because it's just 1 or 2 turnovers or a mistake or 2 here and there. So you betcha. And if they're coaching that right, they're getting their kids pumped up and looking at that information and going to take it into this game.
Yeah, and looking at if there is a tiebreaker, needs to be broken. It's decided with head-to-head result, point differential, and then the almighty coin flip coming in at number 3. So by virtue of a 60-8 win over Water Springs and a 59-12 win over Mackey, any point differential will favor the Bulldogs. So Rockland can feel pretty good about their chances, but if there's a tie between Water Springs and North Gym and Mackey for second place, that is where Brandon says it'd be interesting. And here's where everybody stands. Water Springs is +6 against North Gym. North Gym is +6 against Mackey, and Mackey -6 against North Gym. So North Gym sits at 0, Water Springs at +6, Mackey at -6 right now. That means Mackey win by 7 or more would give the Miners an edge in the tiebreaker. A win by exactly 6 would bring on the coin flip.
That's what we want. We want a 6-point game.
I want it live streamed too, Paul. I want you there. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish.
At the truck stop with Coach Kirkland's double-headed quarter, I want you there.
They'll have to take it out of the trophy case. It's a special key to get in there to get that.
For sure.
Isn't that crazy? And I guess the soft spot in me is I don't want to see that happen because I hate seeing people lose on a coin flip or whatever. But also it's exciting. That's what makes high school sports, right? You never know how it's going to finish at the end, even if you think you do. So, we've covered the top of the state, gone around the horn to Eastern Idaho. We might not have talked about Lakeside enough for Logan. But to be fair, when we got done with that segment, I said, all right, does anybody have anything else to say? And Logan went to the bathroom or something. So I don't know what happened there. So Logan, if you've got anything else to say about Lakeside,
No, I mean, just that we talked, we kind of missed that, maybe that Potlatch game. That's a big one, right? Potlatch and Kamei, both only with 1 loss. That determines who's second, right, in the league, essentially. I mean, barring an upset. I think Prairie plays Logos this week, I believe. And so, I mean, it's tough for Prairie. They could potentially be, and I hit on it a minute ago, unless they win, and then there's some epic loss by, I think Brandon pointed out that Valley loses huge to notice that's probably what it would take for the pendulum to swing enough. Because right now those top 3 seeds from District 2 are set, right? It will be Logos, it'll be Potlatch and Kamei. So they're on the outside, and that's tough, right? And that's where this at-large thing, when it's not, that's the opposite side of the coin, right? Instead of the predetermined bracket, right, where you're in, it's just left up to a computer to decide, and the computer sees your 5-3 record as not as good as a 3-5 team. Right. and maybe that might be accurate, but it always is on paper, at least a tough pill to swallow. So, but that should be a fun one between Potlatch and Kamei up there. That should be a good matchup. Kamei is looking really good this year, and that's another team that who knows? I feel like that one or 2 through 5 there at D1, it's open. Any of them could make a run, and Kamei beat Butte County last year in the state playoffs, so they're just a team to watch out for over the next couple weeks.
Well, guys, it's been a fun hour 45. This went 45 minutes longer than I thought it would, but we knew that the rules were getting tossed out the window with Brandon got. Brandon's going to look at this when he gets home from his game tonight and go, what the heck did they talk about?
Why are you guys still on?
Why are you still on? I can't go. Yeah. And you're still on, but I had a good time. I kind of regret getting fired from the 8-Man Prepcast. That was always a lot of fun. And Brandon takes over, and I don't, he doesn't need me anymore. He puts me out to pasture. So it's fun coming back. But I did get to come back during the exciting time of year. You guys are the experts. You guys are really what makes all this tick. And so one thing we like to do at Idaho Sports is inform you, but also like to entertain. And hopefully there's still a little bit of both. This is going to be archived, so you can go back and, flip through to the things that pissed you off or the things that made you giggle, whichever one. I think we did both tonight, obviously, by the emojis that we're getting. But whatever you do, go back to the Idaho Sports homepage and check out the bracketology update that Brandon kicked out. It's probably one of the most popular features that we do every year. Also, keep an eye on the game stream schedule. Logan and I were talking about that today. Once we know the playoff teams, where they're going to be at, that's when we can kind of put together a broadcast schedule based on where our broadcasters are, who's available, where we can send guys, which games we're allowed to do going into the playoffs. So keep an eye on the broadcast schedule. Hopefully by Monday, we'll know that. Also the photo galleries, of course, we've got the best action photo people in the state on the sidelines, including Will Henneke this year has been taking a lot of photos down there with his.
A couple of them have even been in focus.
I wouldn't go that far, but you have been on the sidelines. That's really my point, was that you've been on the sidelines holding a camera. So we do want to thank you for joining us here, the 8-Man Prepcast special edition. It was more intimate setting here with the four of us. We got to talk a little bit about hopefully as many teams as we could, hopefully your team. If you do have any questions, email Logan. If you have any complaints, email Will, and he'll take care of that. Don't call the Idaho Sports customer service number. That guy's a jerk. He won't answer, and he'll just pass you off, I promise. So now, wrapping things up, I want to say thanks to you guys. I want to say thanks to the fans that make it work for us. Good luck to all the teams out there. But I want to give each of you a chance to wrap up in your own little world about what happened here as well. So let's just start on the top right. Will, go ahead and give us a quick wrap up on your thoughts of going into the playoffs and with how this 8-man season went.
I like it when as many teams as possible have something to play for in the final week, and there's a reason for us to be talking for an hour and 45 minutes on the last regular season of the week. Or last week of the regular season. There we go. So I applaud the coaches, I applaud the teams, and I applaud the communities. It's been a heck of a season, and we've got the second season coming up here in just a couple weeks.
Yep. Logan, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, same thing. I'm looking forward to seeing how everything shakes out. My biggest thing, my takeaways are 1A D2, the bracket is a little unfortunate for some teams, and that potentially might need to. And I think overall, maybe there needs to be some sort of human factor. I don't know the answer to that, and I'm sure it's probably more difficult than I'm making it. But just what we're seeing. Maybe if a human is involved just at all in analyzing teams, maybe that gets us a more even bracket. But teams are going to do what they're going to do. They're not going to complain. They're just going to go out and they're just going to play. And good luck, everybody, this last week of the regular season. Like Will said, tons to play for here, even if you're not in a championship game, right? Even if it's just a third place. I mean, with Max Preps, it matters. Everything matters.
Yep, Coach. Say what you want.
Hey, this has been the most relaxing season I've had in a long time.
I'll bet it has. How many years did you coach before you stepped down?
22 at Cary and 1 at Oakley.
And I said step down, not retire, because you're going to come back at some point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to lead that junior high to the national state championship. It's been a lot of fun to be able to chat about all the different schools and see different teams rise and some programs grow and some of the kids that have been around a long time to continue to excel in their programs. Looking forward to this last week and to the brackets as they play out. So good luck to everybody.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. I do want to point out that there's holes here where I could put more hats. So if you're an 8-man coach or booster club, yeah, just get a hold of me and I'll tell you how you can send me a free hat. I'll even buy one from you. I just want to fill up this wall full of hats.
He might even send you one.
Okay. I mean, I've got a Cary Panther there, but I'm going to guess, that was 3-4 years ago when I got that. So there might be an updated one now.
We got a new one for you.
After that conversation with Lee J, I'm not sure what'll come in the hat when it's delivered to me.
Yeah. You'll have to pay for it.
I'll have to wash it first. So, all right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Yeah, it's been a long 2 hours. That is going to wrap it up for us on the 8-Man Prepcast extravaganza here on IdahoSports.com. Don't forget to like and share, and so that more people can enjoy it later on. For Will Henneke, for Coach Kirkland, and for the Logan Green, I'm merely Paul Kingsbury. We'll have a good postseason, and we'll see everybody on the sidelines. Thanks, guys.